Okay, welcome to Threat Level Noon. That's right, this is where we discuss The Office. Since this is our first time here, I'm just going to give you a brief rundown what's going to be going on. We're going to be taking an episode of The Office each time. We're going to be talking it through, playing some games, getting some hot takes, just doing a lot of really fun activities, and we are really excited to get to talk to all of you. So, at this point, I'd like to introduce you to the people who will be with me every episode. First, my good friend Michelle Stallman. Michelle, say hi.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I've been watching The Office for a while now. It's great. I am obsessed with sitcoms. It's probably my favorite thing in the entire world. So this is really, I'm not even surprised I'm here.
None of us really are, Michelle. All right, and as you can hear from the laughing on the other side of this track, we have Andrew Runyon with us. Is here. Andrew, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm more of a perennial binge watcher of every show that I can get my hands on, and The Office is no different. I think I committed even harder than most shows when it came to binge watching this one. I watched all 9 seasons in 5 days. It basically exactly 5 days. And I basically didn't do anything else, as you can imagine, would be necessary to...
Yes, for those of you watching at home, that's 211 episodes in 5 days. That's over 40 episodes a day. That's a lot. That's quite a bit. So I'd say you are a fan of The Office.
Exactly. Once you're hooked,
you're hooked. Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and go straight into kind of the historical context for this episode. So this is going to be a bit longer than it normally is, but that's because we have to kind of look at where television was at the time of this episode, which came out in March of 2005. When it came out, it's kind of an interesting time for sitcoms. Friends had just ended, which left this big hole in programming, and NBC needed some shows to replace it. So they tried a lot of different new sitcoms. I think probably the 2 biggest attempts at replacing Friends were The Office and How I Met Your Mother. Obviously, How I Met Your Mother more closely follows the format and the style of Friends. But as pretty much everyone knows, The Office that we're discussing was adopted from the popular but short-lived British show, the UK version of The Office. It ran on the BBC from 2001 to 2003. It only had a total of 14 episodes because of how weird British TV is about producing episodes. But what's interesting is that this first season only has 6 episodes, which is the equivalent of how many episodes were in one season of the British Office. So part of what's so interesting about The Office is that it's now considered groundbreaking in the sitcom world. Not necessarily as much at the time, but now we're going back and seeing how different it was. The mockumentary style that The Office is shot in has been around for a while. There's movies like This Is Spinal Tap that really made it popular. The Office was one of the first to do this in a sitcom format and make it really popular. There was a lot of different kind of copycats, but not really, that happened after The Office went off the air, like Parks and Rec or like Superstore, which had a similar format of the large cast of workplace counterparts, with, of course, Parks and Rec also being a mockumentary. Another thing to keep in mind is the dynamic of the characters in the show. So traditionally, sitcoms are more family-oriented, with shows like I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver, to go really far back, are very, based around the nuclear family, but the idea of this, family shifts over time. The Office can find a lot of its roots in shows like The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which was one of the first sitcoms to shift the family unit to being about a group of coworkers who become like family. There's also other shows like Cheers, Friends, Seinfeld, all that morph the family unit into a group of close-knit friends. And I think that you can kind of see where The Office comes in the line of television if you look at the must-see TV lineup in the 90s, which was the Thursday night programming block on NBC. Very famous, very popular. And it was always focused on friends and family, with a few exceptions. But a lot of the shows in that lineup were sitcoms. Most of them were 20-something friend groups in New York, like Friends, Seinfeld, Will and Grace, Caroline in the City, Mad About You, Union Square. There were a few focused on the workplace. There was Just Shoot Me and there was Wings. but they looked way different than The Office, definitely more of a traditional sitcom. Interestingly enough, in the last year of NBC's must-see TV campaign, The Office is actually a part of it. And The Office really put the workplace sitcom back on the map and made it relevant and copyable. Another interesting aspect is that the camera work was not really standard for an American television audience at the time. Since it was a mockumentary, the cameras were always moving around, and the audience is always aware that there are people within the show who are operating those cameras and holding them. Obviously, you don't really meet any of the crew who's working on the show until way later, when it gets weird. But for now, it's still that audience awareness kind of adds another level. There's often scenes where the camera's in another room and has to look through blinds just to capture what's going on. And so as a viewer, it kind of reminds you of what position you're in as you're watching it. So technically, it's almost like the show within a show, because we're watching the final product of the mockumentary, even though we're seeing it as it's being produced. And what's interesting is that kind of framing technique makes it feel like you're watching reality TV, and that these people are trying and failing to keep things secret. In the pilot episode, we get a shot through the blinds almost immediately, because there's no cold open in this episode, it just goes straight to the theme. And in the last shot of the theme is Michael adjusting his Dundee on his desk, which we see through the blinds. They're not in his office for that. And when we cut to the very first scene, the very first shot is from partially across the bullpen with Michael and Jim sitting in his office, but with the blinds open where you can still see them. It may not seem that important, but it was, at the time, was really revolutionary to how sitcoms used cameras and stuff like that, because before it was very steady shots back and forth between characters, and it definitely changed how sitcoms could be shot. So the last quick thing I'm going to talk about is kind of anecdotal stuff about what was happening in the world at the time, which is more of what I'll be doing for a lot of the episodes when there's less to talk about in terms of how it has to do with sitcoms as a whole. So the pilot came out on March 24th, 2005. The number one song at that time was Candy Shop by 50 Cent.
Wow.
Great song. And that year, Crash won Best Picture. The episode itself did pretty well in the ratings. It had about 11 million viewers, but as we're going to see, that number is going to go down a lot as the season goes on. So we're going to go ahead and do a recap of the episode now.
So just to go through the episode briefly, the whole premise is that the branch may need to be closed for downsizing. We are introduced to Jan, played by Melora Hardin. She comes in and tells Michael that either Scranton or Stamford will be closed. At that point, we get to meet Ryan, who I personally hate.
No!
And then, of course, Michael does a Hitler impression. That's a given. The epitome of modern comedy, I would say. We also get the start of the Jim and Dwight feud. So Dwight is shoving Jim's stuff off of his desk, and Jim puts up a little pencil fence around his desk, and I think that's pretty funny. Michael and Pam are talking about messages, and Michael says he's going to run to answer this memo and goes for literally 20 seconds. He does that for a literal 20 seconds. I went back and I timed it. It's 20 seconds. I love it. I think that it is amazing that in this pilot, 20 full seconds are Michael going and the show went on for 9 more seasons. I don't think that would ever happen again. It's really an inspiration that no matter how you start, it really doesn't matter. So Michael calls a meeting and tells everyone that they are being downsized, which is what you're supposed to do, I think. Dwight is hilarious in this scene. He tries to get Michael to tell him what happened first, but after that we move back to Ryan. Michael introduces him to Dwight, and then Dwight talks about karate and his truck stuff, but he opens his desk drawer, and there is his stapler. Only it's not just his stapler. It's encased in Jell-O. A weird, very large Jell-O cake. Amazing prank. Really the first prank of the entire series for Jim, and it's a classic. Both Jim and Ryan come up with dessert puns, and of course Michael is incapable of doing that. Finally we get to meet Roy. After Jim invites Pam to go out for drinks with everyone, Pam asks Roy, her boyfriend, if she can go, and Roy basically says no. Well, I mean, fiance, boyfriend, is it really different in this case? I don't like Roy very much. Granted, we're supposed to not like Roy, but I really don't like him more than the average person shouldn't like him. To end the episode, Michael fake fires Pam. I think it's a really funny scene, but it's also really kind of important for The Office. And at this point, we're going to kind of talk about our thoughts about it. And I'm going to actually start with that scene. Just because I think that the cringe humor that was there in that final scene, I think that's really key for what The Office was trying to do in that first episode, and that, especially the first season as well. Most of the humor is kind of, cringe-worthy kind of cringe humor where you're supposed to be like, oh, this is making me kind of uncomfortable. I don't really know what's going on here. I think it's really important for The Office. Andrew?
I agree with you there. And that's one thing, when I get to my character moment, I'll mention you definitely see that throughout these entire first 6 episodes. They consistently put Michael in his whole basis for his humor is he has no concept of what he's saying and what the actual implications of that are. And anytime somebody doesn't laugh at his jokes, or basically anytime he tells a joke, he insists because they didn't get it. But the idea is that he's not aware of why people aren't actually laughing, and that's the cringe worthiness of it.
Yeah, Michelle, your thoughts on the episode?
So I thought it's always weird to go back and watch the pilot of a show that you've seen, because it's always so different. Normally it's the set itself is different, whatever house or whatever they're in looks different. In this case, it's not really that. But it's just that the characters seem so weird in this episode compared to how they are later. Partially probably because this is one of the only episodes that's completely based off of one of the episodes of the UK Office. Before, from Diversity Day on, they are doing original scripts. So I guess it's partially because they're kind of more directly molded from the UK characters. I do love this episode though. It's the first episode I saw, which doesn't sound like that would make sense for most people, but I always watch shows out of order because I watch them on reruns. But my friend showed me this at in study hall in high school.
Which is ironic because this actually was not the first episode of The Office that I saw.
What was the first episode you saw?
It was season 4. We'll get there.
Okay.
I'll talk about it when we actually get there.
I always start at the beginning of a show. It's that's when I'm sitting down in binge mode. I gotta.
I normally just don't binge. I normally get into shows by watching reruns on TV. That's how I've gotten into most of my shows. But I don't know. This one I actually did. My friend sat me down and was like, "We're gonna watch this."
Yeah. For me personally, it was just when I started watching it live, because I obviously didn't start in 2004 or 2005. I mean, who did really?
No, yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely too young for that.
But I did start in season 4 and then watched it live from that point on. Any other thoughts on the episode itself? I mean, with the Jen Dwight feud, with the meeting Ryan, meeting Pam, any of the character?
Yeah, I had one thing. What I thought was kind of weird was. So obviously there's iconic moments and stuff like that, and it's there's classic moments, which doesn't always happen. But in this case, what I thought was kind of weird was that, kind of going along with how weird some of the characters were, there was a lot of weird character dynamics that were different. Jim and Pam were really weird. They couldn't really hold a conversation. They were very awkward, which is odd because, from episode 2 on, they're supposed to be really good friends. Mm-hmm. So I get that they're trying to play up a flirty angle, but at the same time, they couldn't really hold a conversation, which was definitely weird to see.
So their love interest wasn't actually developed in that first episode.
It's hinted at.
A little bit. So the first episode was actually filmed, I think it was 6 months before any of the other episodes of the first season were actually filmed. And I think that kind of shows a little bit. Yeah. Just because a lot of the characters not only look a little bit different, but also the way that it's written is a little bit different as well. I think that is definitely part of it, wherein they weren't as comfortable with each other yet as they are going to be, even the rest of season 1.
That's true.
Yeah, and one thing too, it's very intentional how they introduce Roy to you. Like you said, you're not supposed to like Roy. They set you up with these expectations of a romance between Jim and Pam. Even though the characters themselves aren't supposed to be aware of it as much as they are,
yes.
And then you're making that judgment, and then they introduce Roy after you've already kind of started picturing those two together,
yes.
And then Roy, nothing he says or does is supposed to make you automatically like him.
No.
But it's just more they're playing on the expectation that once somebody's engaged, that you're rooting for them to be married, and that they're breaking that down from the beginning.
So at this point, we're going to move to another segment that we're going to do. Probably not every episode, but sometimes we're going to do 3 random facts. The first fact, you're a novice. The second, you're a nerd. The third fact, your family and this is all absurd. 3 random facts. So each of us have a random fact that we have about the episode or the characters or really whatever, just, anything, favorite fruit or vegetable, whatever. So my random fact for the episode is that in that scene where Michael fake fires Pam, Michael asks Ryan if he likes the show Punk'd and that kind of stuff. And Ryan says, yeah, of course. But what is interesting is that BJ Novak, who plays Ryan, was actually a prankster on the 2nd season of Punk'd. He was on the show. So that's a little kind of, in-show reference there that I didn't know before I saw that had been written down somewhere, and I thought that was really interesting. Michelle?
So it's not really a fact, it's just like a little piece of weird trivia, I guess. So during the conference room scene, Stanley is standing in the back corner, which is the only time he will ever stand when there are chairs available.
Really?
Yeah.
That is legendary. Interesting.
And that's really key to his character, too, because he's always avoiding work. Lazy,
Yep.
The relatable Stanley, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my fact is a reference that I decided not to do for my top reference that we'll do later on, but it's Michael when he first introduces Pam and he goes, Pam, Pam! And obviously that's a Bam Bam reference for the Flintstones. And the reason I chose that as my fact is because also later on this season, we get to see him use another pun on Pam's name, and it just goes to show how his jokes don't deviate.
It's Pamela Ding Dong.
Yeah,
yes.
Pamela Ding Dong. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yes. So it just shows it kind of gives you a sense of Michael's intent for humor, and then Pam's reaction is basically the reaction he consistently gets.
Yes. So at this point, we're going to be doing a segment that we will be doing every episode, which is Hot Takes. Oh, we got it. Hey, we got it. Oh, we got it. Hot Takes. Oh, we got it. Oh, we got it. Yo, we got it. I love hot takes and cold takes, which we'll do as well a little bit later. Not this episode, but later in this season. So, my hot take for the episode is that there are a lot of really good Jim moments, but I think Jim's best moment is that Wild Dwight is accusing him of putting his stapler in Jell-O. He's eating Jell-O.
It's pretty good.
And I think that's amazing. I think that's such an underrated moment that most people don't even catch. But the fact that, Dwight is he put my stuff in Jell-O again. And Jim's like, now, wait a minute. How do you know that? And he's sitting there eating Jell-O. The nerve of that guy is incredible. Michelle, hot take.
So my hot take is that Michael's pretty horrible in this episode. I forgot how bad he was. I get that it was supposed to be a lot closer to Ricky Gervais's character, which has a lot less redeemable qualities than Michael. And, as the show progresses, we're going to obviously get to see why Michael is not, a horrible person. But I'd really forgotten how, terrible he is at the beginning. Yeah, yes. He makes Pam cry.
It's pretty
hard.
bad.
It's hard to watch, which goes with the cringe humor thing, but it's still weird.
To that point, though, and we'll get to Andrew's hot take in just a second. To that point, something that's interesting to me is that it's clear that even though Michael's a terrible person, and Jan, Michael's boss, really doesn't like Michael or enjoy working with him, Michael must be pretty good at his job. I mean, the first thing that we see is him closing a sale on something Jim wasn't able to do. He talked about how he was able to raise profits and cut expenses. So even though he's a jerk and he's really mean to everyone and no one likes him or likes his humor, he's obviously pretty good at his job, which I think is something that's a little bit understated. Almost a hot take in and of itself, but Michael obviously is pretty good at his job, and I just think that's interesting. It's something that really doesn't get talked about a lot.
One thing about that too is when it comes to Michael having his successful moments, and we get to see this even later on as he proves his sales prowess more and more, he's kind of like the Barney Fife character that he doesn't necessarily. It's not because anything he necessarily intentionally did. It's that his flaws end up working out in such a way that allows him to be successful at the thing he was wanting to do, but not because he had it planned out.
Yeah.
And I think that really applies to the sales aspect of things, but his lack of self-awareness sometimes is what actually allows him to be successful. And so it's just like his flaws working in his favor.
Yeah. And Andrew, your hot take.
All right, my hot take is a Easter egg I noticed in that same scene with the Jello scene. And as they're arguing, they do a shot on Jim, and you can see in the background of that, there's a drawing, a really like crudely drawn caricature of Dwight on Jim's phone, and his eyes are all overblown, and like it just made to look as hilarious and insulting as possible.
Yes.
And that like kind of is just an indicator of like, I mean, if the scene itself isn't, that's like the juvenile nature of the relationship, like the pranks and drawing pictures of each other. It's like, this is you.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really cool Easter egg.
Yeah, I did notice that actually. That was interesting. Yeah, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and move into a segment about character development. And for that, Andrew can take the lead there.
All right. And this one, like Adam mentioned it a little bit before, but the moment I picked as the key character development moment in this one was, or like at least character indication moment, was Michael's Hitler impersonation.
Yes.
Because like we said, like a theme through these first 6 episodes is Michael's complete lack of self-awareness and how he insists on being funny. Like he needs to be funny, even though he doesn't realize what he's actually doing. To do a Hitler impersonation as the boss in an office setting. And this is the first episode. Like this is the first episode that they made, that they put out. Like she said, 11 million people watching it.
11 million people watch Steve Carell do Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. You
think about that.
You immediately get an idea of like what this character is like incapable of. What just an idea of like, wow.
And a little bit more development there. Yeah. In one of the deleted scenes, which I love deleted scenes, and we'll obviously get to that a lot more as I ask questions about those during the games and stuff like that. But in that extended scene of that, so he does the Mo Howard from Three Stooges, and then he does Hitler. You can see in the back, Dwight is saluting when Michael does the Hitler impression. That's real. That is on the deleted scene, and I hope that everyone goes and looks that up immediately, because I laughed out loud for like over a minute there. It was so funny.
That could have been a character development moment for Dwight too, because it's just undying dog-like loyalty to Michael. Like,
yes.
No matter what he's doing. Like.
Yes, Dwight is, yes. Yes. At this point, we're going to be playing a little game. It's just a quick trivia game. So here is what I have for you guys. I have 6 multiple choice questions.
All right.
Okay. We're going to go back and forth, so you each get the opportunity for 3.
Okay.
You can either choose to answer it without getting the multiple choice options, and that'll give you 2 points.
All right.
Or you can get the multiple choice option and you get 1 point if you get it right.
All right.
If you choose to try for the 2 points without the multiple choice and you get it wrong, then the other person can take a guess to get 1 point.
All right.
If we have a tie, I have a tiebreaker question. So is everyone clear on the rules of the multiple choice game?
I believe so.
Okay. Michelle, ladies first, you can start. So, which character appears in every single other episode of The Office except for the pilot?
Oh, okay.
So would you like to get the multiple choice or just take a guess?
Well, okay, so I know which ones isn't. I'm between 2 different characters. Should I go for it or?
That is entirely up to you.
I'm gonna go with Dwight is in every single episode of The Office.
So it's which character appears in every other episode of The Office except for the pilot?
Oh, Kelly.
That is incorrect.
Kelly's not in this one though. Who is it?
She is not in other episodes as well. Andrew, you then now get a guess for a singular point.
To me, I think it's either Meredith or Creed. I'm gonna go with Creed, I think.
That is also incorrect. Your
Isn't
gut
Creed...
was right. Meredith is in every single other episode of The Office except for the pilot. Creed is also not in this episode, but he's also not in other episodes as well. All right, so no points for that question.
Dang.
Andrew, during the demarcation scene where Jim is putting up pencils, Jim's tie has a note on it. Oh, man. Clearly someone else had stuck a note on Jim's tie. What did it say?
I'm going to go with the multiple choice on this one.
All right, number 1, or A, Dwight rules. Number 2, kill me. Number 3, Dunder. Number 4, shut up. Number 5, toner quality.
I'm going to say Dwight rules.
That is incorrect. Michelle, do you want to take a guess at it for no points?
Is it kill me?
No, it's shut up.
Shut
It's shut up. In one of the deleted scenes, you can see Dwight put it on Jim's tie without Jim noticing. All right, no, still no points.
I think you'd notice something on your tie.
Michelle, what is the very first word of The Office?
Oh, I need multiple choice.
Okay, Jim. Okay. All right. Your. And the.
All right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
1 point for Michelle. Congratulations. Okay. Andrew, what does Michael refer to himself as after he calls Jim a grasshopper?
He's like a mentor, I think. I know exactly the scene you're talking about.
So do you want to take a guess at it, or do you want to get the multiple choice?
Let's just see the multiple choice.
All right. A, teacher. B, manager. 3, master. 4, gentleman. Or 5, scholar.
I'd say master.
That is correct.
Yeah.
1 point apiece. So we're tied going to the last 2 questions. Okay. Michelle, how long has Michael been at Dunder Mifflin when he introduces us to Pam?
When he introduces us to Pam.
So when he introduces us to Pam, Michael says that he has been at Dunder Mifflin for...
Okay, multiple choice. I think I can do the math on this.
Okay.
I think.
A, 8 years. B, 10 years. C, 12 years. D, 13 years. Or E, 14 years.
I'm going to go with 12 years?
That's correct.
Oh!
Another point for Michelle. Congratulations.
And I actually remember this pretty well too. 4 years as a manager, 8 years as a salesman.
Wow. Very good. No points, but congratulations. Okay, Andrew, you need 1 point to tie, 2 points to win.
All right, I'll hear the questions.
Michael says that his joke about putting bills in the special filing cabinet, quote unquote, was actually from who?
His brother.
That's correct for the win. Congratulations, Andrew. Winning the first ever trivia competition. The tiebreaker was, where did Michael buy his mug that says World's Best Boss?
Spencer Gifts.
Yes, that's correct. All right, Andrew, congratulations on winning the first ever trivia game. All right, and to round out the episode, we're going to do our final segment of each episode, which are the Dundee Awards.
Say it with an accent. The Dundee. The Dundee.
So we'll be having Dundee Awards for each episode for 4 things. The best reference, the best line, the best confessional, and the best character. So to start out, we'll do the best reference, and Andrew, go ahead and take that over.
For my best reference, I picked Michael's "Come for Guidance, Young Grasshopper."
Yes,
and that is a reference to the 1970s show called Kung Fu, and a lot of people might be familiar with this concept of like the ancient Shaolin monk that is going to be your mentor, but they don't actually know that it's from this show, and that's because it's entered like our collective consciousness through different ways. Like Yoda is a kind of a like similar archetype to this character. It's like through a lot of memes and that sort of thing. Like usually the meme is "Patience, young grasshopper."
Yes.
So that's my reference of the thing, and there's multiple references in this episode, but I felt like this one did a lot of things. It was the very first one of the series, and it shows like Michael's perception of himself right away. Like Jim he's like come for guidance, and Jim's like, no, you called me in here. It's like that's like an important part of it.
Yes.
He's like, well, let me show you how the master does it anyway. Like,
yes.
So like that's just like Michael in a nutshell in the very first moment of the very first episode.
Yeah, that's great. The best line I had as 1 word, 2 syllables, demarcation.
1 word, 2 syllables, demarcation.
Because Dwight, who is like supposed to be a really intelligent person and like knows what he's talking about, no part of this is correct. It doesn't make any sense, and I would think it's really funny. The best confessional, which for those of you who don't really know what a confessional is, you're going to get a lot of kind of Survivor talk, obviously, with the 3 of us. But a confessional is just when someone has an individual conversation with the camera, or usually it's like the narrating section of the episode. And the best confessional that I had was when Michael's incalculable confessional.
That it's really beyond words. It's really incalculable.
Yes, that's my favorite one. And then obviously the best character, I think, of the episode had to go to Michael. It's the first one. I think he's obviously the focus. He's the lead in the show, and especially in this episode, we're barely introduced to other characters. And if we are, it's always Michael's kind of interpretation of those characters, so how Michael interacts with those characters. So obviously, Michael gets it for the best character. All right. Overall, I really like the pilot. I think it's a great start to The Office, and I'm really excited to get to talk about the rest of the first season with all of you. So, for all of us here at Threat Level Noon, thanks so much for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Bye.